In the general session. That's a first. Will the recording secretary please call the roll?
Ned Brown. Here. Catherine Williams Brown.
Present.
Jose Cardenas.
Present.
Juan Cruz. Christopher Davis.
Present.
Michael De La Torre.
Present.
Marisol De La Torre Escobedo. Anna Marie Francois.
Present.
Makita Grinnell Shire. Megan Gross.
Present.
Johanna Howard.
Present.
Susan Aradia.
Present.
Bonnie Clark.
Present.
Ira Litt.
Present.
Monica Martinez. Shireen Parry.
Present.
David Simmons.
Here.
Tony Thurman. Kimberly White Smith.
Present.
We have a quorum.
I now will recess the general session and move to the Education Preparation Committee. Commissioner Klatt, will you please reconvene the committee?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. I would like to reconvene the Educator Preparation Committee. We have 3 items today. Our first item today is 2D, annual report on passing rates of commission-approved examinations from 2017-18 to 2021-22. This item is being presented by Mike Taylor, who I think is joining us on Zoom. I see you there, Mike. This is an information item. Mr. Taylor, will you please begin?
Sure. Good morning, commissioners, and welcome to the annual report on passing rates for commission-approved examinations. This report covers the 5-year period from 27-18 to 21-22. And this year, I'm going to start out this report for you all, talking a little bit about the role of examinations in teacher credentialing and how it's changed a little bit recently, giving the added options available for educator credential candidates to meet the basic skills requirement and the subject matter requirement using coursework authorized by Assembly Bill 130. Now, as you probably all remember, AB 130 allowed candidates to meet the coursework, the basic skills requirement using coursework, generally earning a B or better in appropriate courses taken at regionally accredited colleges or universities. And it expanded the options available to allow candidates to meet the subject matter requirement also through coursework. But in addition to that, certain academic majors automatically meet the subject matter requirement. So the changed landscape with the new options allowed by Assembly Bill 130, it's really changed who needs to take the commission examinations. In the past, most everybody would take these examinations, particularly CBEST and CSET. But now with these new options available, the numbers and the individuals who are going to be taking this test has changed quite a bit. So the beginning of this report, we're going to give you a little bit of information about options that people are using to meet the basic skills requirement and the subject matter requirement. And tables 1 and 2 in the item show the number of credential candidates who met the basic skills requirement and the subject matter requirement by examinations or other options during the 21-22 academic year, which is the last year covered, the most recent year covered by this report, and happens to be the first year in which these options were available. So if you look at table 1 regarding the basic skills requirement, you can see that the information, the specific method used to meet the BSR for each individual, it's not currently captured in the commission's data systems, and we expect this to be captured in the future. But for right now, what we can tell you is again in table 1, how many candidates in 21-22 met the basic skills requirement by examination, and in this case that would be CBEST or CSET multiple subjects plus writing skills, and the number of people who met the basic skills requirement using one of the other options other than CBEST. And as we know, there's many options for meeting the basic skills requirement, but we also know that the exams are the most popular method for meeting the basic skills requirement. And none of the other methods are as popular as the 1,934 people you can see in this who used some other method. And we believe that most of those people did meet the basic skills requirement using coursework, undergraduate coursework. Table 2 shows a little bit more information regarding the subject matter requirement. Here we have some more details about how different credential candidates met the subject matter requirements. So you can see in the rows that we give you the number of people who met the subject matter requirement by examinations, by coursework, by a combination of coursework and examinations, the number of people who met the subject matter requirement by degree major, and then different types of programs. It's expected that the number of individuals using examinations to meet both the basic skills requirement and the subject matter requirement will decrease over time as the new options are more fully implemented in the field. So here we have some data on the first year, and really the word's still getting out there. And because most of these exams that we'll talk about today don't really measure anything that happens in a program. For example, most people just take CBEST because they're thinking about being a teacher, sometimes before they even talk to a program. We think it'll take some time to get the word out to potential teacher candidates that they may not need to take CBEST or CSET, depending on their particular situation. Turning back to our examinations, the majority of the commission examinations are offered year-round, on demand, at our contractors' computer-based testing sites and additional sites throughout the state. And in addition to that, most of the high incidence exams are available for online proctoring. And we provide a lot of resources for examinees via the Commission Examinations website. Here, people can find a wealth of information about each of the examinations. We tell them how to register, how to prepare for the exam, how to request testing accommodations. They can find information about test designs and formats, the content that's going to be measured by each of the examinations, fees, minimum passing scores, and sample questions and answers. The commission has several types of examinations. So we have basic skills examinations, and in our case, it's mostly CBEST, but as we mentioned, CSET, multiple subjects plus writing skills can be used to meet the basic skills requirement. We have subject matter competency examinations, and that's CSET for us. You guys talked yesterday about the reading instruction competence assessment. And we have a number of other assessments that aren't taken necessarily by most or candidates, like the California Teachers of English Learners, or CTEL, the National Evaluation Series, or NES examinations, and the California Preliminary Administrative Credential Exam, or CPACE, and we'll talk about each of those in this report as we go along. In the reports, in the data that you're going to look at in this item, a couple of things to talk about up top. One is you'll see it over and over again, and there's a lot of asterisks in places where the total number of examinees for any given examination is fewer than 10. And in those cases, we don't report pass rate data. And just also a reminder that all the demographic data you see here is self-reported by examinees. The majority of exams like CBEST and CSET assess knowledge and skills candidates acquire before they start a preparation program, as we mentioned. Therefore, most of these exams don't really reflect anything going on within a commission-approved preparation program, with the exception of, say, RECA or NES in those cases. All right, well, let's jump into the individual reports on each of these examinations, starting with CBEST. And if you look in the item at Table 5, you can see that for the 5-year period covered by this report, CBEST had a first-time passing rate of 64.8% and a cumulative passing rate of 81.7%. It's interesting in Table 5, if you look at the most recent cohort of examinees for the 21-22 academic year, their first-time pass score is higher than other recent cohorts have had in recent years. And so it'll be interesting to see how that changes over time with the cumulative pass score, as those examinees have more opportunities to attempt to retake the test if they weren't initially successful. Table 9 shows the first time and cumulative passing rates for each of the 3 sections of CBEST: reading, math, and writing. And we can see here that the writing section continues to have the lowest first time and cumulative passing scores rates of all the sections, and that's historically been the case. Table 10 shows first-time and cumulative passing rates by gender for people who took all 3 sections of CBEST. And an interesting note here is that individuals who identified as non-binary are passing at the highest rates of all the other groups in that table. Table 11 shows CBEST, again, for people who took all 3 sections. It shows first-time and cumulative passing rates by race and ethnicity. Moving on to CSET. CSETs measure the candidate's competency in the subject matter they're going to be authorized to teach. These are content-based examinations just to see that for whatever subject field a person wants to teach for which they're earning a credential, they have the requisite content knowledge to be able to teach that content area. And there have been some recent CSET revisions. We update the CSETs from time to time when student content standards change in each of the content areas. And so you've heard me here a number of years talking about revisions going all the way back to Common Core for next generation science standards. And most recently, the last couple of years, you guys have seen me a lot talking about the work we've been doing with some of the arts areas of CSET. And that work's been to align the CSETs with the most current 2019 California art standards for public schools. And we added 2 new content areas, 2 new CSETs for new credentials in the fields of theater and dance as part of that work. And so this report is the first that'll contain passing rates on those 2 newest CSETs in theater and dance. Table 12 shows for all of the CSETs the domains and the numbers of items and types of items that occur on each test to measure those domains. And you can see there's a lot of them. That table goes on for quite a while. And table 14 shows the annual and cumulative passing rates for all of the CSETs, and it's broken out by content area. So these are for people who attempted to pass all the subtests within a given content area. So for all examinations, all the CSETs combined over this 5-year period, there's an annual passing rate, and again, that's for the 21-22 cohort of 65.5%, and a cumulative pass rate of 81.3%. You can also see in this table for our newest CSETs of dance and theater that they have passing rates of 87% and 88% respectively for their first years on the job, so to speak. Table 15 shows, again, for all the CSETs combined, the annual and cumulative passing rates by gender and ethnicity. The National Evaluation Series of Examinations is the next one we want to talk about. And not a lot of people take the NES exams. These were adopted by the Commission in 2014 for use within the early completion option of intern preparation programs. And the NES comes in 2 flavors. It has an elementary version and a secondary version. And Table 17 shows you the pass rates for each of those separately for California examinees. And Table 18 shows the annual and cumulative pass rate for those 2 combined, broken out by gender and ethnicity. And in this case, it was interesting to me that the most recent cohort of examinees shows 100% passing rate among African Americans. Moving on to RECA. Again, I know you guys have spent some time talking about RECA lately, so I'm just here to report on what's been going on there in the last 5 years. Obviously, RECA tests professional knowledge related to the teaching of reading, and candidates have 2 options for taking RECA. There's a written examination and a video performance assessment. And the RECA written examination was recently updated to include 3 separate subtests, which can be taken separately now. So in the past, historically, RECA was a one and done assessment. You took it, if you didn't pass it, you had to retake the whole thing. And now, starting in 21-22, we added the option of subtests. So when people take RECA and they don't pass one of the 3 subtests, they only need to retake that 1 subtest. Table 19 shows the number of assessments that have been administered over time. And you can see that the number of RECA administrations has declined for several years, even with the implementation of the new subtest model, which we hoped would bring more people into taking and passing RECA a little more quickly, but it so far at least hasn't quite panned out. We'll know more as time goes on. Table 22 shows first time and cumulative passing rates for RECA by gender and ethnicity. And then I'm going to move on to CTEL. Now, CTEL is not administered a lot anymore for very many people. It's really for candidates who need an English learner authorization who don't already have one for some reason, and is mostly out-of-state candidates who take CTEL when they move to California to get a California credential. Table 23 shows the number of administrations for each of the subtests for CTEL that have occurred over the last 5 years. And those have declined as well, as you see. And again, that's somewhat appropriate because in California, everybody prepared already has an English learner authorization. And that's increasingly true in other states as well. So even when teachers come out of state, from out of state, fewer and fewer of them really need to take CTEL over time, but it remains an important part of our exams portfolio. Table 24 for CTEL shows first time and cumulative passing rates. And you can see that for the 5-year period covered by this report, CTEL has a first time passing rate of 48.3% and a cumulative passing rate of 72.7%. Table 25 shows first time cumulative passing rates, first time and cumulative, sorry, by candidate reported gender and ethnicity. All right, so another type of CSET examinations, or another use of our CSET examinations is our world language examinations are used to demonstrate for candidates that they have the level of knowledge and skills required to effectively teach English learners and other students in bilingual classroom settings. So when we look at the CSETs, there's a certain set of CSETs that are used for bilingual authorizations. And Table 27 shows that information for the bilingual specific examinations for CSET Spanish. So these are people who want to earn a bilingual authorization in Spanish. And you can see for the 5-year period covered here, the most recent cohort of people taking these exams had an annual passing rate of 54.8%, and there's a cumulative passing rate of 69.8%. Finally, the last exam that we're going to discuss here today is CPACE. And CPACE, as you know, is the California Preliminary Administrative Credential Exam. And it's used by people who have, 5 years or more teaching experience in California who want to earn a preliminary administrative credential. We call it the exam option often for the administrative credential. And there's two components of CPACE. CPACE has a content assessment and a performance assessment, and they're administered separately. And candidates have to pass both of them in order to pass the CPACE. So looking at Table 28, you can see that the passing rate for CPACE content annually was 66.2%, and the cumulative over time, over the last 5 years, is 77%. And CPACE performance has a much lower pass rate. In fact, it has a very low pass rate. You can see here an annual pass rate of 12.8% and 34.1% cumulatively. And since examinees have to pass both sections of CPACE to pass CPACE, CPACE continues to have a very low pass rate. You can see in Table 29 the annual and cumulative pass rates for CPACE based on gender and ethnicity. And you'll see the pass rates are going to be as low as they are for CPACE performance, because that's the one that people have the hardest time with of the two CPACE sections. Additional examinations data is contained in the appendices and all the other tables in this item that I skipped over during my presentation. And I hope you'll let me know if you have any questions about any of this, and I'm happy to answer those now or later.
We will now open, well, thank you, Mr. Taylor. I should say that first. Thank you. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public who would like to give a presentation, Please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raised hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Angelica Salazar. Please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning. My name is Angelica Salazar, Senior Policy Advocate at Public Advocates. First, I want to thank you for publishing this disaggregated data and for including demographic information. We can see the early impact AB 130 is having by giving teacher candidates other options to demonstrate skills in lieu of sitting for an exam. We look forward to seeing greater impact in future years. Second, in Table 11, we remain concerned about the continued racial disparities we see among BIPOC teacher candidates with regard to the CBEST results. From 2017 to 2022, 48% of African-American teacher candidates passed the CBEST on their first attempt, compared to 78% of white teacher candidates. This gap remains large even after multiple attempts, with 68% of African-American students passing compared to 91% of white students. Are there efforts to address these disparate impacts? We know, for example, from the federal lawsuit public advocates brought challenging the CBEST in the 1990s, that the writing cut score was set arbitrarily high by then Superintendent Bill Honig, higher than what was recommended to him by a panel of experts. To our knowledge, this cut score has not been revisited. Similarly, when the state's own trial expert concluded that 40% of the math test consisted of non-job related and therefore illegal algebra and geometry items, those items were removed. However, the difficulty of the remaining non-algebra and geometry items was increased to match the overall difficulty of the prior illegal math test, resulting in far too similar failure rates for adversely impacted racial and ethnic subgroups. We urge the Commission to do more to identify and address the arbitrary barriers that these test results reflect. Lastly, with regard to cumulative pass rates, it is not possible to decipher if teacher candidates have taken the exam twice or 10 times in order to pass. What is the Commission doing to study the experience of these test takers and develop interventions to help BIPOC students surpass the specific barriers they face? Thank you for your consideration and collaboration in this area.
Harold Acord.
Was having a button issue there, sorry. You'd think I'd know after 17 years, huh? Hello, my name is Harold Acord, and I am representing the members of the California Teachers Association, probably for the last time here at the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. I'm a retired behavior intervention teacher from Moreno Valley. We really do appreciate the efforts of the Commission to provide options for teacher candidates to meet subject matter requirements through earned degrees and coursework. That is great news for us, and we truly do appreciate it. However, the data in this report underscore the discriminatory effects of high-stakes standardized tests and teacher preparation programs. As a world language teacher, I was drawn to the data around the results for the world language exams in the CTEL. Please look closely at these data. They're here, and I just want to point out Hispanic Americans 68.5% passing, white 79.7% passing. I just do not understand that as a world language teacher and a speaker of Spanish, how that is possible. I think there's an issue there and we need to deal with it. We were very moved by Commissioner Francois' comments about assessment yesterday. I believe that the Commission needs to decide if these assessments are going to run it or if the Commission is going to run these assessments and decide what we are going to do around that for our profession. We are puzzled by the following claim in a note on testing bias section of page EPC 2D-7. Commission examinations are designed in part to uncover differences in scores according to various subgroups, particularly groups based on race and ethnicity. to help understand gaps in education among the population of candidates coming into teacher preparation. Sounds to me like we're blaming the candidates. How does this actually take place? How does the commission oversee it? How does the group that is working on this report out to the commission? Ultimately, the buck stops with you all, the commission. CTA sponsored the law for the inception of this independent standards board in the early 1970s in order for our profession to not be subjected to the inequities that were being imposed on it by the state legislature. Like if you protested the Vietnam War, you could lose your credential. This is why CTA created you, in order for there to be equity and fairness for every educator in the state. Even though this is not an action item, commissioners, it is within your purview to ask for an item to come back to where you have deep discussions around assessment and ask what is going on, how are we making this fair for everyone, because the data do not show that it is fair. Specifically, how is this data used to improve preparation programs and or ensure supports for diverse teacher candidates? Thousands of human beings, human souls present themselves for these tests each year in their quest to take up a sacred trust, the education of our children. How are we treating them equitably and fairly? How do we know this? What do the data show? As a member of the LGBTQIA community, too often I have heard throughout my career when I was being treated with inequity, words similar to what I read in this item. I am sorry, it just does not resonate with me personally. You, as the commission, own these examinations and are responsible for their effect on the profession, on the human beings who take them, and most importantly, their ultimate effect on what is the most precious and important group that we have in this state, the children of California. I look forward to seeing and hearing what you will do to ensure equity and fairness for all of those involved and who are affected by this process. Thank you. And if I may take a moment of personal privilege, I just want to say that it has been wonderful to come here and to see that the people in charge of our profession stand up for our profession, do the right thing, and that we together, along with the people in the Education Coalition and the community, the greater community, that we stick together for the kids here in California, because that's the most important thing. Thank you very much, and I hope you all do well. Thank you.
We have no additional public comment.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot in this item, and we've heard a lot from the public. So I guess officially I should say the public comment period for this item is now closed. And I'm imagining that commissioners will have questions and comments. So does anyone want to get us started? Yes, Chair Pro Tempore Simmons.
Okay, I am intrigued by the table on the CSET and the effect of AB 130 on the data. And as somebody who was on more than one of the panels that decided what the structure of the subject matter requirements would be, I can tell you that we worked closely with the various testing companies to come up with a domain structure that was testable in a way that would be minimally expensive. Well, it's not minimally expensive, but the lowest expense possible for candidates. But because the structures were designed in making it testable, I'm not sure that the domain structure that we have is easily analyzed for the transcripts, for transcript analysis. So my question is really for staff, where are we in re-looking at the domain structure? Because under AB 130, as I understand it, you have to find a passing course in each domain, not subdomain, but each domain level. And I'm wondering if we can increase the number of people who use their transcripts to pass subject matter if the domain structure that we have is more consistent with the courses people actually take, as opposed to what is easily tested. And I hope that's not too complicated of a question, but I think it's actually David's group that's in charge of that.
Yeah, I can speak to that real quick, and David will have more information than I do, but you're correct in that the CSETs were designed beginning 20 years ago, and a lot of them have been updated since then. But until recently, they were never designed with mixing and matching coursework as an idea in terms of the subject matter requirements and what that would look like, or frankly, the subtest structures. So the domains measured in subtest 1 versus subtest 2 of any given CSET were established years ago, and they were for an entirely different purpose. They were for, like, as you said, ease of examination, the best type of measurement, things like that. And so it is somewhat difficult with some of the CSETs. When we put together the more recent CSETs in the arts and theater and dance, and when those subject matter requirements and test designs were put together, those were done with mixing and matching in mind, and it's a very different process than what was done previously.
So staff have been reviewing the K-12 student standards adopted by the state board to look at how could we redo the domains or update the domains of the subject matter requirements. And one of the challenges is the two different purposes that they're now being used for. One is the test design, and the other, as you said, coursework analysis. And we're not sure that we're trying to decide whether or not we can come up with one set of SMRs, of domains for SMRs for each area that'll work for both testing and coursework analysis, or if we need to do two separate.
Because
Right. And that's part of the issue is, before AB 130, everything was exactly the same. Everything was based on the SMRs. Even our subject matter programs were assessed against the SMRs for the exams down to the element level. And I think that is a big philosophical change that people are still trying to understand and come to terms with, especially some of our subject matter faculty. So it's something we're trying to work through, but we don't have an answer at the moment. We will be coming back.
Thank you. And I do see Commissioner Martinez, I think, has her hand up on Zoom. So Commissioner Martinez.
I've been unusually quiet, haven't I? Thank you, Commissioner Klatt, for taking over as the chair while I do this via Zoom and recover from pneumonia. So my question is, it seems like most people are still taking the CBEST, and the CSET for multiple subjects. And, we have AB 140 to give folks options. So I'm wondering what we'd like to see, and therefore, how do we get there? Particularly given, what public advocates and Harold raised around some of the scores and issues of inequity there. And then, so that's my big question is when do we think we'll get traction on some of these other alternatives to the test? And then my other recommendation is, this was a lot of data, and that we're data geeks and we geek out over this. I would love to see some of this more visual when you present in graphs, so we can have some comparisons. It was a lot of information to take in. And although I know all of the commissioners were trying to follow on the different charts, there were numerous. Something visual in terms of the presentation, I think would really help us have a deeper understanding of the multitude data points here, and help us focus in on what would be helpful to our teacher candidates, as well as the commission, of course. So anyway, my first question, what do we want to see, with these alternatives that we're providing, and how would we get traction on them?
Well, I'll jump in on that as well. I think we'd all like to see fewer people taking the exams. Just from, I'm a person who lives in the examinations world all the time. And so, so from my perspective, if we looked at the data from 22-23, we'd find fewer people taking the exams and more people using the other options. We know that's happening, but personally, I'm still shocked, and I know other staff have been shocked when we've talked about it, at how many people are still taking CBEST. Even our contractor is shocked at how many people are still taking CBEST. We have done some things, like we added to the testing website right at the top of the page for CBEST and for CSET, a little links to say, did you know, this is only one option for meeting this requirement. You may not have to take these exams. Like, we've tried to get the information out there as best we can, but it's really taking a lot longer because everyone loves CBEST forever. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And maybe we need to work with our higher ed institutions as well, on some type of awareness campaign. I mean, it is a default, right? We're used to it. It's efficient. But given the course taking patterns, it's something students have to plan for ahead of time as well. So I appreciate your awareness about it. I appreciate the information. And I wonder, and our higher ed liaisons would know more than I would. So not pointing a finger at anyone, but just trying to figure out how we get a collective voice here, encouraging this. It's new. And like you said, the uptake is increasing, but I'd love to see what else we can do. So I appreciate the efforts you guys are doing.
And I think, Mr. DeGear, you wanted to comment, and then I do have a list of lots of hands. So
one of our challenges is that candidates who are taking these exams are doing so before they enroll in a preparation program. So if it were just up to our IHE partners here, we'd be able to address this very easily. So we've been trying to analyze who is advising candidates to continue taking the CBEST. I mean, Mike said we're shocked. Or somewhere around 60,000. There have been 60,000 registrations for the CBEST just this year since July 1. And there are 8 different options to meet CBEST besides the exam. So we're trying to understand, where is that advice getting out? I mean, partly it is just historical knowledge, because for decades that's the only way to do it. Next meeting in August, I believe you will be having a presentation from our certification division on some tools that they're developing. Aaron's gonna nod, I hope. Yes, good. So they've been working on some online tools that will be available to everyone that will help identify the options for CBEST is one in particular. It's a wizard that they're developing. Do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? To tell them, all right, you already meet CBEST, you're good. So working on those tools and continuing to work with our higher ed partners is our best strategy right now. But if anyone has further insight as to who is recommending that these people take CBEST, we would love to hear. I mean, is it that we need to get to high school guidance counselors? Is that where it's happening? So we are open to whatever people know.
thank you. And again, there's a lot of you in line right now, but I think Commissioner De La Torre, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So I suspect that a lot of teacher candidates speak to other teachers. And since other teachers know that they took the CSET and CBEST, that's all they know to pass down to these interested candidates. And so and also to have on the CBEST that, oh, did you know, that's too late, because they're already there to sign up because they want to get it done now. So it's very convenient to just sign up. But I do suspect that most candidates who are interested in teaching probably speak to a teacher. And I don't think teachers know that these options are available. And there has to be some way to get this information to the teaching population so that we are aware. I mean, I know because I'm here, but otherwise I have not heard anything of this anywhere else, not in my district, not from my colleagues. They don't know. And so when I tell my colleagues, oh, did you know we just did this? Like, oh, that's good. We didn't know that. They still don't know where to find it, where to see it. So we need to do a better job of getting this information out to the teachers, because that's who a candidate's going to approach. They're not going to approach a counselor, or for the most part, in my experience, they go talk to another teacher. And so we need to do a better job of getting this information out to all of the teachers so that they're aware. And historically, it's been forever.
Yeah.
I mean, because even when I became a teacher, somebody told me, oh, CBEST, CSET, that's all you need. But actually, it wasn't even CBEST. It was NTE. I'm that old. So, NTE, the hardest test in this country, FYI. So I was just told, oh, you need this. That's all you need. I'm like, okay. And I did it because I was told that. But I think we need to get the word out to the teachers, because most candidates will speak to another teacher.
Thanks, that's helpful. And since the commission does not really have a direct pipeline to teachers, perhaps we could work with our partners at the California Teachers Association and the California Federation of Teachers. Thank you, that helps.
And I think the chair would like to invoke privilege and step into the line here.
I have a question regarding the intersegmental. There's an intersegmental group at the Department of Ed, and they do stuff like, is IGITSI, I'll ask Commissioner Brown, is that still a thing? Yeah. Because I'm wondering if that's a place where we could get to them and say, when you're designing programs to transition from the community college to the CSU or to the UC, if that's maybe a place where we can say, be sure you have at least one class in math, at least one class in writing, and at least one class in, and if you have these things, you will have met the basic skills requirement.
I'm going to sneak in here because not only that, the associate degrees for transfer all require C grades or better. And this requires B grades or better. So that's a huge thing. Yep. Huge thing.
Okay, I'll go. That is a big deal. I'll go back to the list. I think Commissioner Francois, you're next. Sure. Okay, so I'll come back to you. Commissioner Heredia.
Right. So thanks for this information. This is a comprehensive report. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate some things and then point something out. It was noted that, by Harold, that we do need to spend more time. I mean, this is important data that really requires us to spend more time talking about among us. And so what does this mean? What does this mean about our work here? But also, as we've discovered also, what is our role in helping to make sure that this gets disseminated, the information that we need to get disseminated gets to the right places. So just a couple of things. I think with the CBEST, having taken the CBEST many years ago, question there is that the undergraduates advisors on campuses generally are the ones that tell students what tests they need to take. So it may be that a undergraduate advisor sees the students, much more often than the actual faculty in credential programs at the university. So that's one avenue of articulation that probably needs to be explored. How is that communication? Could look at that. And the other thing is, the institutions vary in terms of assisting students in preparing for the CBEST. So the institution that I was at, in the College of Education, we actually had a designated person that was an advisor, faculty member, but also that person organized the CBEST workshops and tutored. So right there is, it shows, that there is the discrepancy just in terms of institutions of higher learning, just in terms of how much they can afford to pay someone, because that's a big line item right there in budgets, and you have to think about that. So, look at the preparation and that discrepancy. So, I think that's very worth exploring. And then on table 18, let me get my glasses on here. So I too was very excited on table 18 when I saw the scores for the African American students here, 16 students, and then the passing, the completed and passing. So I think one of the things we have to ask ourselves, and I don't want to take away from this note of celebration here that these students did pass, but I also want to ask ourselves is, were these students at one institution where they had this this help and then pass? Was there a determined focus here of getting these 16 students to pass? So I think those are kinds of questions. And again, that would go back to how do the institutions of higher ed vary in terms of preparing students to take this CBEST? And I also think I know there was one here where you couldn't break it down for world languages. You couldn't break down I believe it was those that were taking it for the CSET, and those that were taking it for the bilingual authorization. And so I was curious as to why we could not get that information. Is there not a way when they take the test for them to identify why they're taking the test? For what particular program? Because again, I think that's important. But let's see. I think you're going to touch on something. I don't want to take something away that my fellow trustee was going to say here. But when I do look also finally at the languages and the passing rate of languages, one thing that I, for example, on some of these is that sometimes those candidates who take an exam for the language, like with the bilingual, in my experience, just in the College of Education, there are candidates who are, that is their major, and then they take this test, versus those that would be considered native speakers, maybe because that that language was their primary language, but in their primary language, they may not have focused 4 years on the grammar of a language. Or I looked up the different kind of nuances of a language. So I think that's also important when we look at the data, and I've seen that. In the bilingual program that I chaired at Sac State, there were a lot of candidates that came in as Spanish majors getting a bilingual authorization versus those that have, grown up with the language. So that discrepancy also, I think, plays a role in just how we think about that, how we think about students. Thank you.
And I think, Mr. Taylor, it looked like earlier you had a response to one of those questions.
Yeah, I think I can answer the question about the bilingual specific examinations. We do know, because some of the examinations are used only for a bilingual authorization, some of the CSET world language subtests. And so we do know, so for example, if you look at the information in the item regarding CSET Spanish that's been referred to, we just picked Spanish out because it's the most popular bilingual authorization and it has the best numbers to put in the report. But so we do know which people are taking it for the bilingual authorization based on the subtest that they take. So, but some of the subtests, subtest 2 in some of the languages, is used for both the content authorization, the subject matter authorization, and the bilingual authorization. And so if you look at some of the CSET tables for those subtests, the footnote that's there just says this includes people, for those, we don't know why people are taking it. It could be for the content authorization, it could be for the bilingual authorization. But when it gets into the bilingual specific subtests, we do know that people are taking those for the bilingual authorizations.
Thank you. I just had one final comment too about the CBEST. A lot of undergraduates are encouraged to take the CBEST, even though they have no intention of becoming a teacher, because it will help them get employed as a substitute teacher, as a way to make money. And so when they graduate, if they're still trying to determine what they're going to do in life, they're encouraged to take the CBEST, and so that they can get into a classroom and make money. So that may be another reason. I have no empirical data on that, but that may be another reason why.
Well, I mean, I think there are a number of different places that people are getting information. And so I think we've identified two important groups here, current teachers and undergraduate advisors.
Think back to Commissioner Francois.
Thank you. Before I get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to Mr. Acord at the CTA. I will say that in the short time that I've been part of the commission, I have learned so much from your public comment. I find you to be incredibly thoughtful, a solid advocate for K-12 kids and all the adults that serve them. And so thank you for teaching me with every word that you have provided with us, with every good thought. And I will deeply miss your participation on the commission. So having said that, okay. Let me start by saying I echo many of the comments that have been shared. I appreciate the depth and breadth of the data that was shared. It was a lot. And figuring out how to share that in a way that helps us, I think would be, it's good advice. And at the same time, every time we look at the data, I continue to be discouraged about what these numbers are telling me about how we are, as it relates to BIPOC students. And at minimum, I'm discouraged. And at times, I'm just kind of downright angry, to be honest with you. And I think across the board, but in particular, I'm looking at the data for the CSET data around English, foundational math, foundational science, or science and physics, particularly as it relates to African American or Black students, Mexican American, and Chicano students. And these are facts. And so I have a couple of questions. The first is, I'm hoping that the staff can remind us of what other kind of qualitative data is being looked at and analyzed so that we can not guess based on our past experiences, but from our candidates that are recent graduates. What do these numbers mean? How do we shed light on these numbers? There's a story to tell, because I can't keep looking at these same numbers over and over again. I can't. There's something that we are not doing. And then the other thing that, and I'm sorry I'm not as coherent as I want to be, but I'm leaning towards the angry part today instead of the discouraged part today. And then I read this, and the summary highlights all examinations portion of this item, page 40. And it says, overall, all examinations show a fairly steady passing rate for the past 5 years, 2017-18 to 2021-22. Steady passing rate does not reflect the gaps that currently exist across the different populations that are taking this test. I find that unsatisfying. The difference between the first-time passing rate and the cumulative passing rate for the CBEST, RECA, and CSET examinations clearly indicate that candidates who take these exams persevere to take and pass the exams, thus increasing the cumulative passing rates over time. I'm shaking, because at what cost do our teacher candidates have to persevere? The financial cost, the emotional and mental cost, because we have candidates at UCLA who are having to take, particularly our social studies candidates, having to take these exams 3, 4, 5 times. And because they were social studies, maybe ethnic studies majors in college, transcript review is not an option for them, not a viable option for them. So I am frustrated that our candidates are being asked to persevere when I'm not sure that we have the data, the qualitative data that illuminates what we're seeing in these numbers so that we can make meaningful changes, not program by program, but structurally across the system. I don't have a question. That was a comment. Oh, no, there was a question. What is the qualitative data that we are gathering and how are we using it?
Qualitative data, I'm not sure that we have qualitative data regarding the candidates you're talking about because they're, for the most part, taking the exams before they enter a preparation program.
Do we know who's taking them? Even if they're taking is there a way to identify, even with the help of our IHEs, candidates who have taken the exams prior to teacher preparation, who are now in teacher preparation, to do some kind of a qualitative, to gather data from them about the experience, anything. I mean, I can't come up with an evaluation plan off the top of my head,
Sure.
but I think that we need to do better on getting a good handle on what that experience was. I mean, for me particularly, if I could be selfish for a moment, I need to understand how you can graduate with a degree from an accredited institution of higher education and not pass a basic skills exam. That's not on the candidate. Something is wrong with either the assessments, I don't know. I don't know, but you can see that I'm at the point right now, I'm getting a little more frustrated than I wanted to be. So I am going to apologize for that. I think we can do better than,
Well, we do collect maybe something similar to the type of qualitative information you're looking for. We do collect, ask a number of background questions of all the examinees, and a lot of that's published in the appendices of this report. And for CBEST in particular, you know, we'll ask them things like about their prior education experience, and, you know, coursework they did in as undergraduates and in high school and things like that. And, you know, that's all voluntary. Not everybody responds to it. And we do look at the information and publish that information for those who do respond to us. And it sort of gives you an idea, I think, for some of the people. But as David mentioned, we don't, you know, the people who come to CBEST and CSED generally come from all different kinds of backgrounds and experiences outside of teacher preparation. This is when we first meet them in teacher preparation. And so their scores on these exams are reflecting what their prior experience was against the content being measured by these exams. So that's not to say that we don't have some work that we could do to try to make things easier for folks or make things, you know, a little more equitable. But it's hard to emphasize too much that these people come to us from everywhere and anywhere. And in my mind, I'll give you my personal opinion real quick. You know, I think we know that not everyone in this country gets the same education, and a lot of factors reflect that. And so in my mind, when I look at particularly CBEST data, pass rates by gender and ethnicity and things, and that's what the language regarding bias is intended to capture, is that, you know, not everybody's getting the same education coming into CBEST. And so those numbers are reflecting that. And so what we can do about that, as you know, what the commission can do, you know, I don't know for sure, but I don't think that we should do nothing.
My last comment, Bonnie, I'm sorry. I know I'm out of order completely. I feel like in the state of California, we have some of the most, the best research institutions in this country. And it seems to me that with a little bit of will, we can do some pretty robust research to get to what is the root cause and then come up with some recommendations on how we can support these young people better. Because this is a structural issue. This is not about, it's multidimensional too. So I don't know. I think that we could think through how we might partner with get advice from the good research institutions in this state to help us figure this out.
I think Commissioner Whitesmith, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you. I appreciate you all. And I want to recognize everyone's collaborative work on this towards an equitable outcome, because that's something I know that we as a team all want. So I want to recognize that first, the spirit of that. Second, I want to just speak to, because you're giving me feelings about this. I'm sorry. But it's not something we don't know. In 2004, Congress acknowledged that the disproportionality with which people of color in this country are disadvantaged by our own educational system. And it's a system that was built to disadvantage them from the beginning. And so we have to kind of acknowledge we're all complicit here in designing programming and testing that actually supports an equitable structure. So we're just trying to figure out how to make it a little bit better. We're tinkering with something that at its core is not built to support our students who identify differently. So I just want to throw that out there, number one. Number two, I also want to acknowledge that I represent the independent private not-for-profit colleges and universities, and the conversation has really kind of disadvantaged us. But we really need to start including us in the conversations, because we do credential 50% of the teachers in the state of California. So one of the things I just want to throw out there is let's start including that in the conversation, because transferring into the CSUs and the UCs is only half of the picture that we're talking about. The other half is including, you know, an entity that we're not having conversations about. So in thinking about that, right, if you look at table 2, only 25% of the folks are getting their SMR as an undergraduate, because in the state of California, having moved to a 5th-year program all those years ago really put us behind in the undergraduate game, okay? So when you look at, for instance, I know our sector, the majority of our candidates are adult learners, second career folks, right? These are folks who are not or do not have the coursework to sub for the tests, you know, from their undergraduate degrees, right? Because it wasn't even part of their processes and thinking about that. So that is also something we need to consider. So just like we do with other kind of health allied professions, where they create low-cost post-bac programming in order to meet those competencies. Perhaps this is something that we, you know, need to consider. How can we create something that's affordable and accessible to folks who might be disadvantaged by the test in order to meet those competencies? The other thing that we were having a sidebar about is that many folks who are second career folks who want to come into teaching usually do that by subbing. So this goes back to Commissioner De La Torre's comment about they hear from at the school level, right, what they need to do in order to substitute teach, right, and to enter the profession that way. And that's where they're getting their counseling and their advice. So I would just kind of move the conversation to include those particular aspects of the work, because I think that's going to help us all get to the finish line.
Thank you. Commissioner Pavri, I think you're next.
Thank you so much. So I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have very passionately spoken to, but I think the message about urgency in the field to address this is absolutely clear. I think we need very different strategies for the different tests here. And really looking at the CBEST, for instance, and the basic skills, I mean, we've talked about students taking it before they come to us. I think the clarity, you talked about the I get C. I don't think that is necessarily an issue, because most of our campuses have identified undergraduate coursework that aligns clearly with the GE courses that meets the CBEST requirements. And students can have been guided, and there's structures on most websites for them to identify on their transcript which courses would meet these basic skills requirements. But many of them are taking the CBEST because they didn't know that they could come to this. The advising piece might need to be revisited. But I go back to that, still tinkering at the edges. And what I might ask and wonder how we might get there is, like with the new PK3 credential, there is not the need for the CBEST because they've got a bachelor's degree. What would it take for us to say, if you've got a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution, you have met the basic skills requirements? This is not a big stretch at all. So if it means changing ed code or having a bill to that effect, then that's, I think, the approach we need to take. For the CSET,
That is precisely what we would need.
Exactly. And so I think that's probably the best strategy that we need to eliminate and clean up this part, which is a relic from the past, really. The CSET issue, I think, is a little bit different because now we have new options that people are still trying to wrap their heads around. I think we moved really quickly to put structures in place, and those structures are far from perfect. And so the field is asking for greater clarity and also for streamlining this process. And so I think that's what we need to address in regards to the subject matter competency, not putting the onus on our candidates and not putting the onus on individual institutions to figure this out, because the workload and the ability to employ and invest resources to do the mix and match transcript review is incredible. And so I think that's where we need to go in terms of providing the greater clarity and structure for our institutions to address the subject matter competence. And if we don't do that soon, again, there's urgency to do that. We'll see these same results again next year. So that's sort of.
I think, Erin, did you have something? You came to the table, so I just want to make sure.
Well, I just wanted to share something, and I think David alluded to an item that certification is going to present in August. And in addition to the basic skills calculator, we're going to kind of give you all an update on some of the work that the education career counselors have been doing, and our plans for the roadmap project that was in the budget bill last year. And just to kind of give you an idea of where we're headed, I think we recognize, and we've heard from all of you, that we have large gaps in the data we collect. There's blind spots that we really want to address. And so one of the things that the team is working on, and this will be a spoiler alert for August, but one of the things that we're working on is an update to our commission database and our online presence for educators, for programs, for employers. And we're building a much more robust system that will not only collect more data, but connect employers and connect preparation programs with candidates and with teachers. So we're building a system that's going to bridge that gap that we don't have information on. Who's enrolled in what program? What type of credential are they seeking to earn? How are they completing subject matter? How are they completing basic skills? And be able to connect those dots for all future candidates. And so I think that hopefully when we get that system up and running, we'll have a way to kind of look at someone's path through into teacher preparation, out of teacher preparation, into licensing and into employment. And so, again, it won't solve the problems, but it will give us something to look at, to explore, to kind of, connect what is actually happening for each of those candidates. And hopefully we can think about what do we want to ask them? What do we want to know about them? What do we want to understand about their journey? And put some of that into our system. And so it's a multi-year project, of course, with anything at the state. But, we're really excited about it, and we'll be sharing more with you in August.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, Commissioner Brown, I think you are next.
Thank you. There's a lot. There's a lot here, and I will attempt to keep my comments brief because I agree with many of the comments of my colleagues. I wanted to bring up 2 points. First of all, I wanted to share, as a classroom teacher, on a regular basis, I meet with my principal and we have data dives, and I need to present my data. And if one of my subgroups in my class, if there's a disparity in my class, my principal expects me to craft an action plan. And then I am expected to go out and do something differently. And so I guess what I'm asking is, I think we need some verbs, because I'm just sitting here wondering, I would like to know more about the actions we're taking to address these disparities. I'm wondering, what is our action plan? What are we going to do differently? And then to really address how we're responding to the data, do we not have the data that we need? Do we need more data? I appreciate hearing about the future agenda items and the work that's going on, but and I don't know if it's at a future agenda item we talk about that action plan or what we're actually doing, because I've sat in multiple commission meetings where our educational partners come to the table and share about their concerns about the disparity, and I'm not clear on what we're doing to address that. So that would help me as a commissioner to respond. Secondly, on the other note that we started talking about how do we get the message out to people about the options. And at our 2 previous commission meetings, we heard from State Superintendent Thurmond about the statewide teacher recruitment efforts that are going on. And I happen to have up on my computer 2 different publications that have come out of the superintendent's office. And they highlight how they're putting together I'm going to quote from it, a one-stop information and referral system to help connect candidates, potential candidates, with ... all the things they need to be connected to. So I'm wondering if we can somehow collaborate with the state superintendent and become a part of that one-stop shop to get out accurate and current information about how to enter the profession, whether it's as a substitute teacher or any flavor of educator we're trying to attract and retain. So instead of starting from scratch, maybe we could jump onto those efforts to really get our message out. Thank you.
Yep, we have been working closely with the state superintendent and Department of Education. I'm going to be a part of a virtual career fair that the state superintendent is sponsoring next week. So we are trying to work as closely with them as we can.
And Commissioner Gross, I know you've been waiting a really long time. Commissioner Pavri, did you? Okay, thank you. And we'll circle back. Commissioner Gross.
So first, I just want to echo Commissioner Pavri. Thank you. As someone who took tests repeatedly after getting an undergraduate degree, it felt like, what had I done wrong, right? And it sent a message to my parents that their first generation college student daughter maybe did she not study hard enough? So I really would like to encourage us. I know we're dangerous when Dr. Sandy isn't here, maybe a little bit, but I would really like to encourage us to have that conversation, because I'm not sure when folks might have been thinking about subject matter competencies, understanding the complexities of that. And so I just really think it should matter that you have a bachelor's degree. Like that should mean something. I also I wanted to echo all the concerns and that we need to do something because our annual percentage rate and cumulative rate, especially for our African-American candidates, are unacceptable. And if that was the data I brought my boss, I would if I was in my own classroom, I would have to expunge those test results because they're clearly not valid, right? Like something's wrong. So I have concerns about that. I want to echo that. I think we need to start paying attention to CPACE. I'm really worried that we're going to have an administrator shortage soon because people are getting beat up right? Not physically, but like verbally. And well, yeah. And I think it always feels like we're catching up and reactive, and we've been that way with the teacher shortage. And I just really, really worry that that's what's next. So comment there. An action item. I feel like this is something we could do on our own website. I just went because I thought about the CBEST. And why did I take it? Because I wanted to sub and see if I wanted to teach. So on our own commission webpage, I went to emergency 30-day substitute teaching permit, right? And it gives you the 4 steps for the requirements for initial issuance. Number 2 is the basic skills requirement. You have to go to a separate webpage, which for our younger generation of clicking, that's a lot. But then my second thing is then we ask them to scroll a lot. And we don't offer, it's true. If it's not shiny right there. So we don't tell folks about the meet the basic skills requirement by coursework until items number 7 and 8. So could we switch that and put 7 and 8 as number 1 and 2 and push everything else down and see if that makes any difference? But at least today we can do something.
So thank you for that. And again, I feel like we are just one meeting too early with this conversation. We should have planned this better. We have been working on an amazing tool that's called the Basic Skills Requirement Calculator, and it's intended to be front and center on that page, the first thing that an individual sees. And it has coursework listed as the first option, and it allows someone to be interactive and go through and select what they have done to meet the basic skills requirement. So yes, that is, we have a lot of work, and it's very, very close to being released. So we'll have more for you in August. So there are action items that you will see in August that will help with some of these things.
Thank you. And I think Chair Simmons, you asked a while ago.
Okay, so much has come up with this. And as I think maybe the oldest person in terms of commission stuff in the room at this point, I may be 1993. Okay. In 1987, I was hired by Cal State Northridge to do CBEST preparation for math because they had a grant from the federal government saying that they needed to diversify the severely handicapped profession. So I went from CBEST prep in 1987 to now I'm the chair pro tempore. So that's thanks to CBEST. But so that was a problem. We knew it was a problem back in 1987. Now, in 1997, we had something called the pre-intern program. And it all goes back to what Commissioner Susan had to say earlier about money talks. Because what happened with those grants was there was a person who was responsible for making sure that people got through the process. And if we don't make a person responsible for something, it won't happen. So I really think what we need to do is to figure out how we can make it so that there is a venal reason for people to support us in this. Because if you look at, if I am a credential analyst and I have a choice between giving somebody a paper that says, here's how you pass CBEST, and well, let me go through the next 2 hours looking at your transcripts to figure out whether or not you pass, the most well-intended person is going to give them the paper. So I really think we have to figure out a way to make the system easier for us to go with the transcript version than we are with the testing version. And I think if we could have regional systems, I look at all the people that come from RIMS, and I think, that all started with a regional grant. And you guys are probably the last in the state that are still functional in terms of regional support. So I think that kind of system is what we need. And whether we ask in a terrible budget environment, if we ask for somebody who will be responsible for that, or if we just figure out how to allocate our resources again. With Mary and Marquita gone, it seems as though that really is the way that we should go. Okay.
So, me again. So I again feel like spoiler alerts here. One of the things that we have planned for our updates to our credentialing database is the ability for educators, when they create a profile with the commission, to be able to have their transcripts electronically submitted to us prior to having to apply for a document. And our hope is that we will be streamlining our workload with this new system in a way that will allow us to divert some analysts to doing a transcript review for basic skills upon receipt of that transcript, which would mean that in our database, someone would be able to log in and see after that analysis is completed if they have or have not met basic skills through coursework. Right now, the commission doesn't have the authority to do coursework review for subject matter competence. But if that were to change in statute, then we could also develop a feature in our system that could offer that as well. Again, we have the barrier of not having enough analysts right now to do that work if we were to get that statutory authority. But it is something that would be our goal if that were to occur. So lots of possibilities there. We're looking very forward with our technology and with what we're thinking, and we're building scaffolding that would allow that if those changes were to occur with funding and with statute, that we would have the ability to do that. So again, we have ideas. We are acutely aware of some of these issues that folks are experiencing and ways in which the commission could help support candidates and support programs. It's just takes time to make these changes, build the technology, and hope that we can get the resources that we need. So,
Commissioner Brown.
Okay. Remember how this was an exam item? We've gone way deeper and beyond it, and this is exactly where we should be. We have two collective charges here, right? We're to prepare, we're to be the credentialing commission that sets it so that teachers can be prepared to teach. We have a deep focus and a priority to do it in an equitable manner, to not only reverse what the systems have been doing all this time, but to make it so that there is an equitable and diverse way to do that, so that we can teach our children well and that we can support teachers in doing that work. So I'm thinking about this as almost like teacher preparation is, in a way, there's recruitment efforts aligning with the Department of Education, so that we're not trying to do everything, but because we're supposed to be doing the teacher credentialing, but we set the preparation. So it's almost like one leg is recruitment, one leg is preparation, and the heart is that we connect with each other. We have to do that. This is a human enterprise here. So to me, these four it's good you have us on here, because all of these segments need to work together. We're not identical, but that's where the commission comes in to help do the work, so that if otherwise it's going to get, it puts all four of us in this awkward position of trying to keep reinventing a wheel that no one seems to be willing to talk about. We don't do the same thing, but when I was listening to Commissioner White-Smith, it was like you were talking about our system as well. So this idea that we've looked from the past, we're trying to do something new. It's critical that we're able to do that, because we need not just more administrators, we need good teachers who can connect with our children and work with our families and communities. So just that two legs and the heart is really important. And I think this intersegmental stuff is really important because wherever someone comes to, we want to get them to become a teacher. And we want to get those barriers away. Every single community college counselor is only supposed to talk about all of the people that they have and just get them in to college. That's all these general counselors are told to do. So we need a system that allows teacher preparation to have priority. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would argue, just as a small point, you said we've gone beyond. I think we've just gone deep into just, I mean, I think the data is there to support that we're want to make sure in case Dr. Sandy's listening, we're still on task. We're still on topic. We have not gone beyond. We're just in it. We're in it. Commissioner Pavri, I think that you were waiting.
Thank you. Two quick comments. So the first one, I'm really excited to hear, Erin, your preview of what's to come, and especially with the counselors potentially being able to do the subject matter reviews. The basic skills, what I hear from the field is, it's a fairly simple review process. And most candidates you've got your bachelor's degree, you've met that requirement. There is the grade issue, but it's not, I haven't heard complaints about the hardship on doing that one. The subject matter review is a whole different beast. The second area, and I think a couple of my colleagues did mention it prior to, while I was waiting to talk about this, but the CPACE is alarming, incredibly alarming. The test scores and the pass rates. And talking about different strategies, I mean, here is one where you truly do question how well is this assessment aligned with the standards. A 30% cumulative pass rate is just not acceptable. And so I really think digging deeper through some sort of qualitative analyses and making significant changes to the assessment is probably warranted here.
But one thing to remember about the CPACE is that it is a candidate trying to get out of completing a preparation program for being an administrator by passing an assessment. So how can a candidate on their own accumulate the knowledge and skills to become an effective site administrator without a preparation program? I mean, that's a challenge.
Thank you for clarifying that. So this is not the test that they take at the end of their program. What is the test that they take at the end of that? We don't have data on.
That's the Cal APA.
Correct. We don't have data on the Cal APA.
Coming in August.
Got it.
The data
Got
for
it.
performance
Thank you. I appreciate
assessments
the
are coming in
clarification.
August.
And the pass rate, just to give you a preview on the Cal APA, is very high.
And if I could add one more just point as you're thinking about this item, the data from this item is during the period of time where the examination fees have all been waived. So yes, no, just kidding. I retract. Next year we'll have that data.
So Commissioner Davis.
Sorry, I'm paying attention. Good morning, everyone, and happy Pride Month. I don't know if I got to say that. Yeah. A couple of comments. I really have enjoyed this robust conversation around these scores because like Commissioner Francois, I'm sitting here just brooding, and the steam has been coming out of my ears the whole time I've been going and reviewing this item, and not just because the data is beautiful, by the way, and the actual report itself is wonderful. It's what's in that report that isn't so wonderful. And echoing something I've heard not once, but at least 50 times from our partners there at CTA, from Mr. Acord especially, giving you a shameless plug over there, Mr. Acord, about why we have these preparation examinations in the first place. I'm going to comment on something that Commissioner Brown said about the fairness and equity, or fair and equitable, something you said. Because of our system and how unfair it is and how inequitable it is not ever going to be equitable for us to have an examination to measure something that was inequitable to begin with. You cannot measure the education that I get in South Central Los Angeles and compare it to my friends that teach, for example, in Palo Alto or in Cupertino in the Bay Area, because it's just like apples and bananas. You know, it just doesn't, it's not equal in that way. So echoing what Commissioner Poveri said about, well, why do we even have a CBEST? Like, basically, why is it there if we have a performance assessment? And we know from, I think it was 3 or 4 meetings ago, when we talked about the Cal APA and we talked about the 100% pass rate, which I thought is wonderful but ridiculous when it comes to looking at this particular data and seeing that there's so many African Americans, especially African American women, that are failing this test exponentially, all of these tests across the board, I should say. And there is no real qualitative data that helps us to understand why. And I know that, and I think Mr. DeGeer spoke to this last time when I spoke up about this, saying that we're going to try to do better to get more, you know, data collected on our systems, because we're not necessarily equipped to collect that data at this time and all of that. So I think instead of using the commission's resources or, you know, toward, you know, trying to improve the discussion about the CBEST, if the CBEST didn't exist, then everybody would have to do it the other way, right? And so that, I think that would just make this a lot less challenging and a lot easier. It just seems to make sense. And then when Mr. Acord spoke about this, you know, initially when my first commission meeting, I think it was February of last year or something, and the proposal at the time was to shift the RICA. And then he talked about how the RICA, I didn't know much about pass rates for the RICA. Look into that and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And then the same with the CBEST and the flexibility that we now have because of the legislation. I would say that, you know, we could, I don't know if we have the power to eliminate a test because at this commission body, but I know we have the power to at least suggest it. And we can say that we have the support for that, not only from this particular body. I know we haven't voted on anything and I'm not proposing we do so at this moment, but also our partners in education from a proud member here, CFT and CTA. I've never heard any of them say, yay, CBEST. That has never been a conversation I've ever had anywhere. And as someone who did take the CBEST in 1992, I was 18 years old and I had just graduated from high school. It was easy because I had just taken math classes and the writing classes, right? And it's not so easy for everybody. And I get that. And I got minimum scores. I got a minimum passing score, and that's all you need to become a teacher, right? And so by the time I got my bachelor's degree, I was ready to sub. And that's exactly what I did. And it was a lot like Commissioner Heredia said when she talked about how we do this to make money. You know, it's that factor. So in short, what I want to say is that we could just as well not have this test and then move on to discussion about what Commissioner Francois alluded to about the brokenness in a system that we could fix. We could mend some of these cracks in the actual delivery of the content, the way our systems work, our antiquated systems for getting a credential, and not really waste time on assessments in the future if we could just get rid of some of them. I guess it just seems like an unnecessary evil. Because one last point I want to make about data, when we talked about quantitative and qualitative data, when you talk about data and data that represents people, you erase the people in that discussion. You're talking about numbers and not human beings. And a point I tried to make a couple of meetings ago when we talked about cut scores, especially with the Cal APA. I'm still a little miffed about that. I love the fact that our administrators are passing at exponentially high 100% rates. A little jealous about that. But the other factor there is this. It's a performance examination. So why aren't all of the teacher preparation exams performance examinations? I know that isn't something that can change overnight. I'm well aware of that. because I think there's a bit more equitability in that. And because of the blind scoring and reading of that, it lends itself to, lack of implicit bias when it's scored. I mean, there was just so many sort of pluses in that regard, but even not necessarily creating performance assessments, if we know that the equivalent courses are taught at our private institutions, our UCs, our Cal States, our community colleges, and they satisfy the requirement, why reinvent the wheel and add a fifth something system? Because it complicates things and it has an excessive cost. If I take the CBEST once, I take it 5 times. I'm paying the fee 5 times to retake that test. It's ridiculous, so that I can come into a profession that pays me the least of all careers. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's worth it in that regard. So there's my 2 cents.
Commissioner Hartwig.
Thank you for everybody's comments. This has been very illuminating and I really appreciate it. And I am just curious to know from our team here, were we to decide that we would support eliminating the CBEST as a requirement, could you just lay out for us what the steps would be that we would need to do and in what order, just so that I know this is not an action item, but obviously this is a topic that I'm certainly interested in at least exploring, and it would be very helpful for me to understand what are the steps within the commission, what would we have to get other players to do, and what the timeline might be like, so that we could know, for instance, if at least a step we have to do today would be, for instance, to request that you come back with a different action item for the first step in that process, so that we could at least decide whether we wanted to move forward. So could you walk me through that?
Yeah, so because the basic skills requirement is in statute and it does explicitly identify an examination in that section of statute, the steps would be that you all would need to vote to require staff to seek an author for a bill, identify what you would want that bill to do, what the intent would be. And our Office of Governmental Affairs would go out and seek an author who would support that bill and partner to draft language to, basically remove the basic skills requirement from statute from teacher preparation programs. And I believe we're ending the first year of the 2-year legislative cycle. So Jonathan Howard's going to be presenting his ledge item later today. And so he will probably be able to give you more information on what the timeline of the current legislative cycle is and how the 2-year process works. But my understanding is that any bills that are 2-year bills don't get read again until January 1st. And so I don't know how we would enact legislation in the middle of the 2-year cycle, but Jonathan may be able to shed some light on that in his item.
Thank you. I have 2 more people who have requested comments, and just in no way am I trying to limit our discussion on this because it is so important, but I also want to be mindful of the rest of the agenda too. But I do have Commissioner De La Torre, Commissioner Simmons. Have I missed anyone? Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. Commissioner Simmons?
I just want to go back and say that having tests is not a bad thing. If you look at the way that subject matter was originally designed, it was where you would get your degree in liberal studies, or you would get your degree in math. And maybe your particular math degree didn't cover the breadth that was necessary, so you could go in and take the test to meet that requirement in other ways. If we were to go, I'm really going back to what Commissioner Megan had to say. The option for CBEST, as long as there's a basic skills requirement, if we go the 3-to-3 route, It's different. But as long as there's a basic skills requirement, I think we want to be able to have an exam option. So let me tell you an example. I have a paraeducator right now who is fantastic. I want to get her into a teacher ed program, but she has a C in her math course. So it would be helpful if she can just go and take the math subtest, and then she will have met that requirement. Conversely, it should be her choice, and under the legislation currently, it is her choice. She could go to the community college and take a course and try and raise that C to a B. But I think the idea that we have flexibility by using an assessment, but not as the main way of doing it. This is just the parachute, or parachute, in case you don't have the coursework. So I really think that by redesigning the domains for subject matter so that the coursework option is the preferred method, and then and that's the way it was with MSAT. People got their degree in liberal studies, and it was only for a small population that had to do the MSAT exam. And then NCLB really kind of screwed it up, where it became, then the assessment, the test became the default. And that's really where the problem is, I think, is not that we have an assessment, but the problem is we have an inequitable assessment, but having something else that is in place, if your particular transcripts don't fit, I think is a good thing.
Commissioner Francois.
I don't disagree with that at all, by the way. But I do want to make a point that putting recent waivers aside, an assessment exam privileges folks and families who can afford test prep and exam fees. And so for students who have had not premier education, right, that doesn't help them, because we know who those young people are. I just want to make the point, I don't disagree with you.
Any other commissioners? Oh, yes, Commissioner Cardenas.
I just wanted to add to what Commissioner Francois just said, where as far as education level, when you look at the test takers, majority of our candidates that are coming in have a high school diploma or less from their parents' education, right? And so they're trying to come into the profession not having the tools, and for us to understand what are those tools that we need to address and how can we assist our candidates is what we really need to be going after, right? How can we support? And so as a school counselor, we look at data, we look at gaps, and then we try to address those gaps. So and I think this is where we're at, right? We're looking at this data, we're seeing these gaps, and we have various partners in the room that can really help us out. We have HEXA, we have CTA, we have variety institutions. We really need to make a change, and no disrespect, Ms. Scubel, but I know you said you're jumping right ahead of the next meeting, and I kind of feel like we're behind by 20 years. And I say that to you because 20 years ago, when I was first coming into the profession and I was going through all of this, I voiced it, I said it to my professors. This is a concern. Like, a lot of us are not getting through this. A lot of us are really sacrificing our mental stability, and right now with everything going on, why would our students or candidates want to continue, right? And so we have a great opportunity. I appreciate everybody's dialogue, but we really need to do something sooner than later. And I know things take time, but as we've seen with the pandemic, when things need to happen, things happen. And so we have an opportunity to start to move the needle faster. And one last point that I wanted to make as far as transcripts. We have this system that we work with, the UC system, with the transcript evaluation service, where they evaluate all of our students' transcripts to make A through G eligibility. So it helps us, it gives us another idea. So that might be a system we might want to reach out to that maybe we can incorporate somehow eventually when that becomes available to evaluate transcripts and just put out reports to say, you know, if a candidate's eligible. So I know it exists. I'm going to say this word. I know all of you use it, Chat GPT, right? If that can work, I know that we can definitely move the needle a lot faster. That's changed in what, 4 months? We don't have to wait another 2 years. But with that said, I just want to, you know, just to recognize, thank you, Mr. Taylor, for this report. Thank you for opening up our eyes. I do have an ask. I know you've done this in the past, but is it possible to have data that really has location data as far as like rural schools, city, to maybe include that? Because I would like to see how that affects our students. And then also when we talk about just systemically, at the high school level, we see our students have a hard time passing algebra, right? And so when we looked at the data, about 79% of the students had geometry or higher. And so many of our students struggle with just passing algebra at the high school level. So we have a systemic problem at our lower grades that we really need to address. We need to help our students. But 77% of the students have a 3.0 GPA or higher that are trying to come in, right? And so obviously our students have what it takes, but maybe in some areas they need some more assistance. I know it is a practice that we have right now with our school districts, with our higher ed institutions. If you look at the data, the majority of the reason, 82% of the people that took these tests and passed tests, so they were taking it for teacher credentialing or for employment. So we know we need to let the employers know that these changes exist because of practice, and we really need to go after our IHEs, right? And not blame it, but just have that. You talked about school counselors. We would love to help because we have to start education pipelines a lot earlier. We always think about we have to wait till community college until they get to college. We have a potential of students that want to come into education, that want to make a difference, but we need to capture them early and we need to let them know how to do it in different ways because there's a lot of potential here. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you all for really working, but we need to move a lot faster on this.
All right, there's so much. I have appreciated listening to everyone's comments so much, and I think as many people have noted, the urgency is here. This was an information item. It was like a long information item, but an important, I think, very important discussions that we've had. So no action is needed at this time. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And also I think this was a team approach. So thank you to the staff for helping us with this item. I think we need a little bit of a break after just to absorb and process all that we just heard. So we'll take a 5-minute break. So it's 10:21. Let's please be back at 10:26. And thank you again. 10:20. So I've been given the green light. I can move forward. So our next item is item 2E, initial institutional approval, stage 3, consideration of provisional approval for Northeastern University Mills College. This item is being presented by Michelle Williams-George. This is an action item. Ms. Williams-George, will you please begin?
Thank you, and good morning, commissioners. Agenda item 2E presents Northeastern University's responses to stage 3 of the initial institutional approval process for the commission's consideration and possible approval. Northeastern University is seeking initial institutional approval for eligibility to offer 4 programs at its Mills College campus. These programs include a preliminary administrative credential, preliminary multiple subject credential, preliminary single subject credential, and preliminary education specialist, early childhood special education. So as a reminder, the IIA process was revised at the October 2022 commission meeting, and both the initial program preconditions and general precondition number 9 were moved from stage 4 to stage 2. But Northeastern University Mills College was already in the IIA process when those revisions were made, and for just reasons of timing did not present the relevant preconditions in stage 2. Instead, they've addressed the preconditions in this submission. So we do have two representatives with us today, although I only see Mike Jackson. Is Tomas Galgara here?
Tomas just got kicked off of Zoom. He's trying to get back in, so I expect him
Okay.
any minute.
So we will have two representatives with us today. But before proceeding, I would like to note that this submission reinforces Northeastern University's commitment to maintaining the quality of programs that was offered under the Mills College program sponsorship. And stage 3 focuses on the institution's capacity to comply with policies, statutes, and regulations, as well as provide an institutional infrastructure which supports the proposed programs. Provisional approval in stage 3 would mean that Northeastern University as an institution is approved, but cannot offer the proposed teacher preparation programs at the Mills College campus until the completion of stage 4, wherein the relevant program standards are determined to be aligned and program-specific preconditions are found to be met. Their stage 4 submission will be brought before the Committee on Accreditation, who may approve or deny the programs. The link to the webpage for the proposed programs can be found on page 4, and this webpage houses all the previous and current submissions and contains the full responses to the stage 3 preconditions and common standards requirements. Summaries of the institution's responses to the initial program precondition, as well as precondition 9, can be found on pages 4 through 6. Commission staff reviewed these preconditions and found them all to be met. Summaries of the institution's responses to the common standards begin on page 6, and a team of BIR members collaboratively reviewed and came to consensus that all common standards are aligned. So based on the findings of met for all preconditions, relevant preconditions, and aligned for all common standards, staff recommends provisional institutional approval for Northeastern University Mills College for a period of 3 years. This time frame will allow the institution to navigate the remaining stages of the IIA process, which include responding to program preconditions and program standards in stage 4, as well as collecting program data and hosting a provisional site visit in stage 5. After that provisional site visit, staff will bring a complete report to the Commission for consideration of full approval, thereby completing the IIA process. Staff is happy to answer any process questions, and institutional representatives, they are both here, to answer any questions regarding the stage 3 submission. And I'd like to thank you for your attention to this item.
Thank you. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public who would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
We have no public comments.
Okay, thank you. Seeing none in the room. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? And I see, yes, Commissioner Davis.
Good morning, gentlemen, and good morning, Ms. Williams-George. I appreciate the report, and I appreciate your perseverance as the liaison to the Committee on Accreditation. I know it's been a little bit of a higher hurdle, if you will, to get to here because you all are an out-of-state preparation institution, and I'm glad that you've made it this far in your process. So congratulations on that. And I know that it's a little complicated with the nuance of Mills College being kind of secondary and you all kind of thrusting forward and it's not all coming together at the same time. But I appreciate you being here. I just wanted to say thanks and hello.
Thank you.
Do any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Francois.
I echo Commissioner Davis's congratulations, and I just want to express my gratitude for you identifying St. Mary's College and San Jose State University as your advisory board partners. I think that you will, as you know from the last commission meeting, for me, context really matters. And my concern has been around really understanding that area of our state and serving the aspiring teachers well so that they're ready to get back to our state. And I think that those two partners will help you to do that well and in important, meaningful ways. And I would just encourage you that during your provisional status, that's now, right? Okay. That you would really think about ways to collaborate with them above and beyond the 2 advisory board meetings that you're going to have every single year. And so I wish you all well.
Commissioner Heredia?
Yes, thank you. So I just want to point something out that just seems like it follows the discussion that we had this morning about this CBEST, but not necessarily a test, but your attempt for candidate recruitment and support, and the fact that I noted here, it says that, all applicants will be interviewed by program faculty to gain insight into the applicant's personal and professional motivations and capability within the program's goals of anti-racist and culturally and gender inclusive practice. I am going to be very interested in seeing over time your challenges and successes in terms of the recruitment, but the focus here on diversity and the support that you have outlined that you will give candidates. This is one of the strongest, I think, I've seen in terms of recruitment and looking at it through the lens of diversity and how to help. So I look forward to not only watching the progress, how you progress through the accreditation process, but also whatever insights that, potential insights that we can gain in terms of one institution's attempts to address a topic that we have engaged in many times. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Brown.
Good morning. It is still morning. And thank you for this. We are excited to have you continue the excellence that Mills College is known for in the Bay Area. I do have a question. I was looking at the list of the credentials, the credentials that you're going to be offering it, and it includes the new Ed Specialist PK3 credential. And I wondered if you could just speak a little bit about how you will select faculty to teach the courses in that new credential that includes early childhood.
It looks like Tomas is still having issues with Zoom. And unfortunately, he's our subject matter expert in this particular topic. So I don't have any, let me just take a look and see if I have a note that he had sent me about this. Quick, thank you for your patience.
And if not, that will be a question. It's not the last time we'll be speaking with you. So,
and those questions actually will be addressed very specifically in stage 4 when we have the program standards.
And my
Thank you.
apologies.
Thomas is back.
You see, let's hope that Zoom doesn't quit on me. It's been doing it anyway. So we are very fortunate to have a couple of very strong colleagues in the School of Education, Dr. Jackie Urbani and Dr. Priya Driscoll, who both are quite knowledgeable about sort of the changes to the policies that have happened in terms of EC. And in fact, there's a great deal of interest in moving even further into the early childhood component and the pre-K piece of it. It's something we're exploring as once we get these programs in place, expanding in that direction, because we recognize there's a great deal of need for that. And we're especially interested in with the support and resources that we will have through Northeastern, really being creative and thoughtful about what that means. In fact, the whole discussion about the whole subject matter and content knowledge that educators need to have is something that, in fact, we were chuckling a little bit about this, and because we've been having such conversations here at Mills at Northeastern about what it is that teachers need to know and how best to ensure that they have it in order to move on to the credential process. So that's what I can tell you at this point. And yes, indeed, stage 4 will have more details about some of the specifics about the programs that we hope that get approved soon.
Thank you.
Other commissioners, questions, comments, motions? This is an action item. Oh, yes, Commissioner De La Torre.
I just wanted to thank all the diligent work that they've been doing on this in this process. I'm really excited about the whole way that they're including interviews of the candidates, and I think it's wonderful. So I move that we grant provisional approval to Northeastern University Mills College and set the approval period to 3 years, if that's the appropriate motion.
Thank you. So Commissioner De La Torre has made a motion to grant eligibility.
And I second that.
And I have a second from Commissioner Davis. Is there further discussion on this item? All right, seeing none. Will the recording secretary please call for the vote?
Matt Brown.
Aye.
Jose Cardenas.
Aye.
Juan Cruz.
Aye.
Christopher Davis.
Aye.
Michael De La Torre.
Aye.
Makita Gwynno Shire. Oh, Megan Gross.
Aye.
Johanna Howard.
Aye.
Susan Aradia. Bonnie Clark.
Aye.
Ira Lit.
Aye.
Monica Martinez.
Aye.
David Simmons.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Well, congratulations. And I know we all look forward to hearing more as you move along in the process. So thank you, Ms. Williams-George, also.
I'd like to thank
So our
everybody as well.
last, oh, thank you. And again, we look forward to hearing from you again. Right, moving along, our last item for this committee is item 2F, initial institutional approval, stage 5, consideration of full institutional approval for Stella Middle Charter Academy. This is an action item that is also being presented by Michelle Williams-George. Ms. Williams-George, will you please begin?
Thank you, Anne. Good morning again. And do we have, oh, lovely. We have just Ashley with us. Okay. So item 2F includes the report and findings of the provisional accreditation site visit conducted at Stella Middle Charter Academy for its proposed teacher induction program. And with us today from the institution are Ashley Colburn, Director of Teacher Induction and Development, and Nicole Wellman-Noble, Vice President of People Development. The provisional site visit occurred from March 5th through the 7th of this year and was the culminating activity of a process that began in December of 2016 when Stella Middle Charter Academy attended Accreditation 101 as part of stage 1 of the revised initial institutional approval process. So in January of 2019, things began to move quickly with the completion of stage 2 when the commission approved their eligibility requirement submission. Stage 3 was approved in November of that same year, and stage 4 was approved a few months later in March of 2020. So they really kind of kicked it into gear at the end there. As part of stage 5, Stella Middle Charter Academy began offering their proposed teacher induction program in August of 2020, culminating in the March 2023 provisional site visit. Stella Middle Charter Academy intends to become the program sponsor for the Greater Los Angeles Schools Teacher Induction Consortium, which they identify as GLASTIC. During this provisional year, the consortium has consisted of the 9 Bright Star schools. However, once fully approved, the institution will broaden the consortium and offer teacher induction services to other schools. During the site visit, Stella Middle Charter Academy and GLASTIC Consortium demonstrated a clear commitment to anti-racist practices and lifting up BIPOC voices, as well as implementing organizational practices which support diversity, equity, and inclusion for all students and staff members. The provisional site visit report was presented to the Committee on Accreditation in May 2023 with the finding of accreditation with stipulations. The COA reviewed the report and discussed site visit findings with the team lead and site representatives. Site representatives discussed the steps they had already taken to address the stipulation, there was only one, and outlined their plan to continue doing so. So following that discussion, the Committee on Accreditation agreed with the recommendation of accreditation with stipulations and approved the one stipulation as written on pages 2 and 3 of the site visit report. Staff recommends the Commission grant full approval to Stella Middle Charter Academy with the requirement that the institution address the stipulation identified in the site visit report within the designated timeframe and report back to the COA for further consideration and action. And again, thank you for your attention to this item. And it looks like we have more representatives popped in.
Thank you, Ms. Williams-George. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public who would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raised hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Public comments.
No public comments? Okay, thank you. And seeing no one in the room, the public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Yes, Commissioner Davis.
I wanted to say thank you again for all of your hard work in getting you to this stage. I know this has been a multi-pronged process for you all. And again, congratulations for getting this far. And with that, I want to make a motion. And that motion, and I'm going to read exactly from the executive summary here. To approve Stella Middle Charter Academy with the requirement that the institution address the stipulations identified in the site team visit report within the designated time frame and report back to the Committee on Accreditation for further consideration and action.
Thank you. So there's a motion by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner, or excuse me, I should say Chair Simmons. Chair pro tempore. Simmons, is there any other further comment, discussion on the motion? Right? Oh, yes, Commissioner Simmons.
I have a question. With 34 candidates for 2021 and 21-22 having only 43 candidates, is the idea that when the consortium is fully up and running, that it would be a larger group of inductees?
Yes, exactly. Right now we serve the Bright Star schools and we look to expand, granted after approval.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Will the recording secretary please call for the vote?
Danette Brown.
Aye.
Jose Cardenas.
Aye.
Juan Cruz.
Aye.
Christopher Davis.
Aye.
Michael De La Torre.
Aye.
Megan Gross.
Aye.
Johanna Howick.
Aye.
Susan Aradia. Bonnie Clark.
Aye.
Ira Lett.
Aye.
Monica Martinez.
Aye.
David Simmons.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Williams-George, and thank you and congratulations to Stella Middle Charter Academy. And we wish you well. And I guess we will see you in actually, this is a process question. When the Committee on Accreditation reviews, we won't see them personally again, right? We see the report. So we will hear. so we will be paying attention, even if you're not here with us through Zoom. So congratulations and best wishes as you move forward. Having no additional items, I adjourn the Educator Preparation Committee.
So the next item is going to be the Professional Practices Committee, and Commissioner Hartwig, will you please convene the committee?
I will indeed. Thank you. I now convene the Professional Practices Committee. The committee has one item today. Item 3A is the Division of Professional Practices Workload Report. Rachel Gritzofi will present this item. Ms. Gritzofi, will you please begin?
Thank you. Good morning. To increase its oversight of the work of the Division of Professional Practices, in 2011, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing directed staff to present information about DPP's workload as part of the Commission's agenda. The Commission's dashboards report on 6 key measurements in line graph form, showing both the current year numbers as well as prior year numbers for comparison purposes. The total cases are the number of cases within DPP, including cases in the intake unit, before the Committee of Credentials, pending before the Commission, and pending administrative hearing. At the end of April, the caseload was 3,139, which is above the normal range of 2,600 to 2,800 cases. We are currently evaluating the historical data of application and casework to determine if recent state and federal incentives to attract individuals into the teaching profession have created a new normal, or if the caseload will return to the 26 to 2,800 average. Cases opened are new cases opened during the month from all sources, including criminal arrest notices, district reports, affidavits, and educators who self-report misconduct. In April, staff opened 454 cases, which remains in the normal range of 400 to 500 cases opened per month. However, in March, you can see DPP opened 635 cases, which is well above the normal, also causing the increase in the overall total numbers. The initial review and formal review charts reflect the number of cases reviewed by the committee at its normal 3-day meeting. The 2-step process is required by statute, and as expected, the initial review cases have increased to at least 90 or more cases per month. Cases closed is the number of matters closed by commission action, committee action, or closed by staff where the commission have given formal delegation of authority. Single offense alcohol cases that do not involve schools, minors, or publicity. The timing of closed cases is based on the meeting dates, both of committee and commission. In March, DPP closed 562 cases, which exceeds the normal range. In April, 332 cases were closed, which is slightly below the normal range. AG cases refers to cases in which an educator requests an administrative hearing to challenge the recommendation for discipline made by the committee. An administrative hearing is an evidentiary proceeding where an administrative law judge hears and rules on the evidence, and the commission is represented in these hearings by the Office of the Attorney General. The number of cases where the AG is representing the commission is shown in the last graph. The number of cases currently administrative hearing stage is 160. As always, DPP is committed to work that is critical to public service and the commission's mission. DPP continues to maintain a steady case production while at the same time ensuring quality case preparation for committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gritzofi. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. Public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Klatt.
I just want to say that I appreciate we get this report every time, and the graphs, I think, make it seem so simple. Like this is just, these are just numbers on a graph, but I just want to extend my appreciation to staff that these graphs, I think, don't really show the full picture of how much work that you're doing on behalf of educators and students. And so thank you, because the numbers, I think, don't accurately show that scope. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Klatt. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, well, I will ask my own questions then. Let me echo the thanks that is done for all the work from the Professional Practices Committee. Now, this is one of the 3 pillars of work that the Commission does. ensuring the professionalism and of our educators and the safety of our children. But it is work that is done in closed session to protect the privacy of the practitioners and of the children and anybody else involved. And so I really appreciate that this is our chance in public to acknowledge this extremely important work that is done. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You note in the report that the caseload right now is at 3,139, which is a nice chunk, over 10% above the 2,600 and 2,800 normal period. And that you think that it's possible that that's, I would say that there's a positive reason for that, which is some recruitment efforts that are going on. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, as we are always concerned about making sure that we have adequate capacity in DPP to keep up the pace with which you handle these cases. Do you have any concerns about the capacity to keep up with this caseload, should this caseload become the new normal level?
Thank you. No, we're still operating with the workload that we have, where the 90 cases are moving through the initial review stage. We're still operating well under capacity with what we know we're capable of doing, which is the max that we attempted to do, which was during the audit, was 115 cases. Right now, the workload processing through the queue is the crossover of timing, right? Our busy season starts in January. It takes us time to prepare the cases and get all the documentation. By the time that happens, we're at 3,000 this month, right? Because our busy season is June, and we have all these initiatives to get teachers into the classroom. So I don't believe that we're going to stay at this number. I did run preliminary numbers for May, and they've already dropped 172 cases to 2,967. So we're showing, as the busy season is starting to wind down, our cases are moving through the system, and we should see it decline. And then we'll see in historical data whether or not we rise back up in August when busy season starts again. So I think we'll have a flux. And we did look at 5-year historical data, which shows that we absolutely peak both certification and DPP January, and then we slope down, and then August, and we slope down. So I'm hoping this is just I would like to consider that the push and initiatives to get teachers into the system is working, and those folks are coming in, and we're just seeing the smaller section of those numbers coming through DPP.
Well, that would be a wonderful indicator if that is the case. Thank you for the explanation of the natural workflow over the course of the year. And yes, we appreciate and rely upon you keeping us up to date on your capacity needs. Are there any other questions or comments before I wrap up this item? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gritzoff. This is an information item and no action is needed. This concludes the business before the Professional Practices Committee. The committee is adjourned.
Next is the Fiscal Policy and Planning Committee. Commissioner Cardenas, will you please convene that committee?
I will do so. Good morning, everyone. I now convene the meeting of the Fiscal Policy and Planning Committee. The committee has one item before it today. Item 4A, update on the governor's proposed 2023-2024 budget, is an information item that is available as an agenda insert. Sarah Saley will present this item. Ms. Saley, will you please begin?
Good morning, members of the commission. My name is Sarah Saley, and I'm the Fiscal and Business Services Manager here at the commission. Today, I will be providing an update on the fiscal year 23-24 budget. Governor Newsom presented the May revision on Friday, May 12th, which is an update to his proposed 2023-24 budget that was released on January 10th. The May revision proposed the following statutory changes through trailer bill below. Utilizing current resources to provide transcript review to assess basic skills requirement and subject matter competence for educator credential candidates, abolishing the test development and administrative account Fund 0408, and consolidate into the Teacher Credentials Fund, which is Fund 0407. The current expenditure authority and positions will shift into the Teacher Credentials Fund, Fund 0407, and exam fee revenues collected will also be deposited into the Teacher Credentials Fund. The May revision also proposed authorizing the commission to provide a comparable California credential to any United States military service member or their spouse that possess a valid out-of-state teaching or services credential to provide instruction or services in public schools of the state of issuance when the candidate is relocated to California on military orders. It also proposed codifying current practices stemming from updates to teacher assignment monitoring outcomes, reporting requirements related to the federal Every Student Succeeds Act. This will also clarify the roles of the Commission and the Department of Education around data reporting on educator credentialing and assignment. It also proposed waiving the teacher performance assessment requirement for educators who were unable to meet the requirement during the COVID-19 pandemic and who completed a commission-approved induction program or completed 2 years of satisfactory teacher evaluations. And then for the teacher and school counselor residency grant program, it proposes 3 changes, which is increasing the per candidate allocation to grantee local education agencies from $25,000 to $40,000, requiring a minimum stipend or salary to residents of no less than $20,000 per candidate, and allowing residency candidates additional flexibilities to complete their credentialing and service requirements. The May revision also included funding for the items below, which is $3.4 million one-time general fund to backfill a shortfall in the teacher credentials fund fee revenues. And that reflects a decrease of $2.6 million one-time general fund from the governor's January 10 budget release. $690,000 one-time general fund to support the procurement of networking equipment and laptops for the commission's relocation to the Richards Boulevard office complex in May of 2024. $612,000 one-time teacher credentials fund to support an external contract that was originally associated with the development of the teacher performance assessment for candidates seeking a credential in special education. The expenditure authority was originally provided in the 2019 Budget Act and will be used to support the final payment of a multi-year contract. At this point, the Senate and the Assembly have reached a two-party agreement. They voted and passed Senate Bill 101 yesterday, June 15th, in order to meet their constitutional deadline. The bill was subsequently enrolled and presented to the governor yesterday at 11:20 a.m. And with that being said, they have yet to reach the three-party deal with the administration. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or clicking on the raise hand icon and participating through Zoom or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
We have no public comments.
The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Gross.
Thank you so much for this item. The question I have is related to our one-time funds, the $3.4 million one-time to backfill a shortfall. What do we have kind of in place thinking ahead to kind of, there's a reduction of students taking tests and there's more opportunities for like subject matter, like beyond COVID, what is our plan for that? How are we going to get that kind of revenue? Like, do we have a plan? Should we start talking about that?
That's something we'll definitely have to start exploring. And we know that during the pandemic, our teacher credentials fee revenues took a dip because there were less educators in the workforce. So as we work to increase the educators in the workforce, it's our hope that our revenues will continue to stabilize to what they were pre-pandemic.
Any other commissioners? If there are no other commissioners, I do have a couple questions and comments. First of all, I'd like to say I think that the increase in the teacher and school counselor residency program from 25 to 40,000 is a huge increase. And to have that minimum stipend for $20,000, I think will be a huge help for residents and it is definitely needed. I think one of the questions that I have is, how are we supporting our classified employees? And I think one of the questions is that we allow residents additional flexibilities to complete their credentialing and service requirements, but I noticed that our classified employees may not have the same structure or the same availability of, they sometimes take a hit on their sick leave, things like that. So if we're trying to recruit a workforce, I know that can also be a concern for those in credential programs. And I guess Mr. David DeGuerra will answer that.
So we do have the classified staff employee grant, which supports them. And there was at least one bill in the legislature this session regarding providing funding to districts when a classified staff member does their student teaching, so that they can be paid during that time as well. I don't know the status of that bill, but Jonathan will be coming up soon, and I think between the two of us, by then we can figure out where that bill is. Next item. Yeah.
Thank you. And then the other question I had had to do with, let me just find my spot. I think in public comments, it came up a couple of times as far as waiving the teacher performance assessment requirement for educators who are unable to meet the COVID-19. I don't know if you could speak a little bit towards that. I know some induction programs are a little bit worried about taking that responsibility.
So we were not really involved in the negotiations on that one, but I can tell you that the governor's office, the legislature, the state board, and we also have heard concerns about losing teachers during a teacher shortage, because having that requirement while they're in their first couple of years of teaching is something that may cause some of them not to complete it and then not clear their credentials. So that's the concern that we understand is trying to be addressed with that provision.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioners that may have questions? Commissioner Davis?
So I'm trying to get myself situated here. And thank you for the report. I appreciate that. I just wanted to make a general comment about some of the proposed cuts that were mentioned in the May revise, and one of them being the National Board Incentive Grant that was had for teachers to receive the $5,000 stipend per year after they become National Board Certified for working in the high priority schools. And also we know that National Board Certification is a pathway to clear credentials. So again, cutting funding from that pipeline of incentive granting systematically and disproportionately, again, alienates and unfortunately disproportionately affects children of color and teachers of color in that regard. And I hope with the budget process that is still sort of ongoing, that they have reconciled that and they've reconsidered that, because it would just be like the state shooting itself in the foot as far as that goes. When you say you have a teacher shortage, you want to put highly effective personnel in the classroom, and then you take the funding away, the incentive away for working in the high priority schools for these teachers who've worked really hard to get through this process. And I know Mr. De La Torre and I, we spar a bit at this table about, who's doing the best with that, but we both have the same drive and the same mission to get teachers in those classrooms, in those spaces. And it would be unfortunate if that funding was swept away. But thank you. I appreciate the report.
Are there any other commissioners? Commissioner Francois?
Thank you. Back to your question about the COVID relief around the TPA. It just occurred to me that if that happens, that would be a really interesting group of folks to gather some data around diversity, retention, maybe student outcomes. I'm not sure because I'm not a firm believer in student outcomes being able to be measured that quickly in
They're an interesting group to
They would be
study
really
just from the experience that they went through during COVID.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that given our earlier conversation around data.
Yeah. And one other thing I should have mentioned is that one piece of feedback that we did provide is that as May Revise was written, it did not include administrators who are in that same situation. And so we suggested that they also be considered.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Pavri?
My question has to do with, and I don't know if there's any new funding for it, doesn't look like, for the test fee waivers. How, is there any new funding? And if not, how much do we have available? I don't know if you can speak to that, but.
Yeah, so originally last year, the 24 million was for 22-23 and then a 23-24 as well. And it is still in the budget bill, and we are set, I believe, if it gets signed, we are set to get another 24 million in addition to last year. So
Thank you. And if I may ask a follow-up question, this has come up from the field a couple of times, and I don't have the answer. Do candidates get a waiver just for their first attempt? Or does this waiver carry over for a second and third attempt as well?
it's as many attempts.
I can answer that question for you. They may have as many attempts as they would like.
Any other commissioners? Looking on Zoom. Well, this is an information item and no action is needed. Thank you, Ms. Saley. Thank you, Mr. DeGear as well. This concludes the business before the Fiscal Policy and Planning Committee. The committee is adjourned.
Do we want to take a 5-minute break? Okay. I will cross my mind. We'll be fine. Okay, next is the Legislative Committee. And I will convene, that's me. I will convene the Legislative Committee. The committee has one item before it today. Item 5A, status of legislation, is an information item that is available as an agenda insert. And Jonathan Howard will present this item. Mr. Howard, please begin.
Apologize for my voice, that something in the air is good morning, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I'll be providing the commission with an update on the legislature and the bills that staff have been following. At the beginning of this month, bills had to be passed out of their house of origin in order to stay active. The next deadline will be on July 14th, which will be the last day for policy committees to meet this year. And it is also the day when the legislature will adjourn for their summer recess. They will come back on August 14th and then work for the next 30 days. On September 14th, they recess for the year. They will return in January of 2024 after September 14th. As I highlighted in the report, of the 16 bills I presented to you at the April Commission meeting, one has been held in Appropriations Committee where it is unlikely to leave. Another 2 have been labeled 2-year bills and will be taken up again in January. This usually happens when authors, sponsors, and other interested parties have asked for more time to work out various aspects of their bills. As I mentioned last time, Commission staff have actively worked with legislators, committee staff, bill sponsors on practically every bill in the report, both in providing context and background on the work the Commission currently does, as well as providing technical support on how goals for legislation can be best effective. At this time, with your permission, I'll highlight a few of the bills that I didn't mention in my last report to the Commission. AB 1251 by Assemblymember Luz Rivas would require the commission to convene a work group on credentialing in computer science. The work group's task would be to determine which credentials should also authorize teaching in computer science. The provisions of the bill are contingent upon an appropriation of funds. If funded, the work group would have to begin their work by July 1st, 2024, and report their findings a year later. AB 1722 by Assemblymember Megan Dolly will allow licensed vocational nurses to serve as school nurses if they meet the minimum requirements for credential in school nursing. And AB 238 by Assemblymember Maritsuchi would, if funded, create a new grant fund under the administration of the commission. This grant, the California Student Teacher Support Grant, would award grants to local education agencies to pay student candidates the local daily substitute teacher rate while they do the required student teaching. SB 765 by Senator Portantino would take several actions to help alleviate the state's teacher shortage. The bill has three major provisions. The first is to exempt retired teachers who return to the classroom to teach from post-retirement compensation limits. The next increases the maximum award amount for the teacher residency grant program to $40,000 per teacher candidate. And the final provision annually exempts 1,000 Cal Grant awardees from demonstrating financial need if they agree to enroll in a teacher prep program after earning their bachelor's degree. Summaries of the bills I'm tracking and their location are detailed in the report. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions the commissioners might have. It was raised as an earlier item, so if you'd like me to address that now on how to run legislation, I can do so, or if you have questions before you, I can do it at the end. So
let's go ahead with that.
Okay. All the bills that could be authored this year have been authored. Like, as I said, they've all gone through their entire first house and are in their second houses. At the beginning of next year, legislators will be looking to introduce new legislation. For the purposes of the commission's work, I, with the assistance of commission staff, can review statute and draw up some language, and I can present that to you for your review and approval at the December meeting. Legislators will not be looking before December. They're going to do district work generally from September to December. They're in their districts. It's not a campaign year this year, but they will be going around their districts and just doing district and constituent work. They'll be coming back, or their offices will be taking requests or hearings in December. So for your review and approval in December, and then once that is done, I'd share the language with State Board of Education, Assembly and Senate education staff, working with them to help identify potential authors to share the language with. If an author is found, they would take the language and then move forward through the regular legislative process. And someone was asking about classified students or classified grant recipients. And that bill is AB 383 in the item. It's under the credential, under the grants section. It is on page, page 3. AB 383 by Zabur, California Classified School Employees Teacher Credentialing Program. That bill is moving forward through the process, but it has no funds in it. So even if it is passed and signed by the signed by the governor, it needs to have an appropriation, and currently it doesn't. So that could be something that happens in the budget deal, or it could happen in a future date where they can put the language into statute, and then over the next few years they could fund it.
Well, should we go to public comment first? So we will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raised hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone.
We have no public comments.
The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Okay. Jose?
I just wanted to address AB 383. I noticed that it says leave of absence for student teaching. Is there any way to add this for educators in general? Because I know when school counselors also have to do their work, they're not. Is there any way to add that kind of language for other support services? Okay. That's a no. Thank you.
Generally, we will be reached by appropriations committees for cost to us. If this says we can raise that as a technical question, but it's up to the author's office and appropriations to decide what they want to include in the legislation. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question on SB 811. What are the 10 states or the states that are part of this compact? Do you know?
I do not know right now. That bill is moving. Identical legislation is moving through several state legislatures right now. I believe there's a website that tracks it. We did get an email. Oh, you have it, Dave? So currently, where's the map?
I mean, that's the website.
Compact map, here it is. Yeah, if you go to teachercompact.org, so current states where this legislation has been enacted are Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Florida. Language has been introduced in Oregon, California, Alabama, Ohio, New York, and New Jersey.
I think today's update was that Oregon passed
Yeah,
it
and
yesterday.
Oregon passed it yesterday, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe Commissioner Tron was next. Or not? Student liaison, sorry. Did you have your hand up? Okay, then we go to Bonnie.
Thank you. And you may have kind of answered the question when you said any proposed changes or basically that ship sailed, but I'll still throw out maybe a follow-up question regarding AB 1255. That's the ethnic studies. It directs us, I think, to create a teacher task force. And one thing I noticed in it when it talked about it directs us, I think, to create a task force, and it lists out the membership in that task force. And one of those items is teachers with a single subject credential in social sciences. And so I guess a two-part question. One was, well, it sounds like I already know the answer. Is it's too late to suggest or consider any amendment to that to include any other single subject teachers? Is that correct? So we're kind of done.
AB 1255, the ethnic studies workforce, that's a 2-year bill. It has
okay.
It is in a special bubble right now where it won't be taken up again until January.
So then it is.
So there is
possible.
time, but the appropriate time would be in January when and if the author decides to take it up. So that's the other thing about a 2-year bill is it's in a holding pattern, and sometimes they are taken up in January. They have to be taken up in January and then dispensed with, right? There's a short time schedule, but a lot of the times they're not taken up or they're changed. They're gutted. It's called gutted and amended,
right?
where a year has passed since I introduced a bill and now I have other priorities. So, and I happen to have this one bill sitting here and it's.
So it might become about pedestrians and crosswalks.
Yeah.
Okay. So
no, it said, if we think that it should include single subject teachers of other credentials, that's a note I can make and I can share it with Assembly Education Committee staff because that's where the bill is. And the author's office. So when and if they decide to move forward with that bill, they will have that information at their hands.
And the reason I ask, and I may be alone in this, I don't know, but I know CDE has on their website a list of proposed courses or suggested courses to fulfill the ethnic studies requirement. And there's some really interesting courses, I think, in there in arts, in music, in literature to satisfy the ethnic studies. So I'm thinking that there may be teachers with single subject credentials in other areas who might have a deep interest in gaining an ethnic studies second credential or authorization in some way. And some of those courses look really, I mean, I think they do what we want them to do. And so I would love to see maybe an inclusion of other single subject credential holders in that work group. So thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
Parallel work is being done at the institutions of higher education, at least at the community colleges, around ethnic studies in particular, not only coursework, but faculty qualifications. So I think if I could just add that note there when it's time in January, if it comes back. But what I really wanted to ask about was AB 1555. If you could let us know the status of that. The TK, teacher qualification requirements, possibly being delayed.
That bill's in assembly probes, and I believe it's recommended for the consent calendar. So it will probably stay there until they take up their suspense calendar. So that'll happen when they come back in August. If the bill moves forward, we'll know then.
So they'll take it up again in August to see whether or not they're going to pass it.
Yes. So in general, what happens is bills go through policy committees first, and then once they're passed out of policy, they go into a probes. And a probes in general, unless there's no cost associated with it, those bills, and if they just want to, those bills will sit on something called the suspense calendar until all the bills have been heard and the legislature has some idea of how much money all the legislation they're going to pass costs. And then they have meetings behind closed doors where they work out which bills move forward, which bills don't, which bills get funded, how much they get funded. And so that's where that bill is currently.
So if any member of the public, et cetera, was interested in either following that or providing information around that, is that over? I just don't understand the process.
Yeah, actually, that bill's been heard. It's sitting on the suspense calendar. So I
Okay.
believe they've taken all the public comments that they will at that point on that bill.
Okay. Didn't do that very fast. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Brown? I'm sorry. I'm looking right at you, Monica. Commissioner Martinez.
Did you notice I responded though? I'm happy to play the role of Kate today. So this is for the staff and it's a huge question. So answer it however you want to, because it is conjecture. But when we look at the budget shortfall, I think it is now $30 million by the state. How do you think that's going to, billion? Yes, exactly right. It's a big word, billion, not million. How will that impact? What bills do you think that's going to have the biggest impact on our ability to recruit? Well, that's not really our we'll say train and support teacher candidates, right? So it's kind of a hypothesis, a conjecture, but if we're kind of like looking down the road and we know there's a $30 billion shortfall, where might teacher preparation be hurt most in the various grants and policies we've been awarded? So it's huge. I mean, you have all leeway to go as big or small as you want.
No comment.
Brilliant.
I would say in general that it seems that this area is not an area of contention right now in the negotiations between the governor's office and the legislature. The legislature's budget seemed to protect most K-12 education funding as well as higher ed. So I don't believe this is an area they're looking at. But yeah, we won't know until June 30th when the governor has to sign it. There's still no deal. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no,
that's as much
really,
as I was comfortable saying.
Yeah, no, that's encouraging. Would you be able to comment anything about the Golden Gate Scholarship? Like, is that still going to be funded? No comment?
Yeah, that's Student Aid Commission.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
no
CSAC.
comment.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, thank you. No, I appreciate that.
I lost track. Is there anybody else? Commissioner Pavry?
So maybe if you could speak a little bit to the status of AS 238. Yes, I'm sorry, AB 238, Murashki's bill on paying student teachers at the substitute daily rate. Do you know where that is? Is there, it's a grant. It's on page 3.
Are you looking for where it is in the process or just more details on the bill? It's moving forward. It's moving. It's all these bills except for the 3 I mentioned that, and in the packet, it says status. If they're in a committee, they've moved forward. It'll say they're held in commission, that bill's not moving forward. And then the 2-year bills are ones that might move forward. But no, this bill I believe it's being heard next Wednesday in Senate Education. Again, though, that bill has no funding in it. Yeah, so. And part of that, as I said, is that's one of the reasons why these bills sit in the appropriation suspense calendar is when and if it gets out of Senate appropes, it might have funding in it. So.
Does the bill talk about the mechanism to make that happen? I mean, would the district just send you a bill? How would that work?
On the contingent upon appropriation, that kind of mechanism, or
no, reimbursing the district for the day-to-day sub cost of a student teacher?
It doesn't. So currently, the bill does not describe the mechanism. It just says shall be tied to the local substitute rate. So yeah. In general, agencies are ones who have to come up with the mechanisms by which legislative intent is carried out.
Commissioner Reddia.
Well, that's a big one then. Because I was assuming when I first read this, the way it's written, I was assuming that, oh, now CTC is now going to become the person, they're going to find a new person in one of their departments to now take all the bills in from each of the districts and then reimburse the district. Is that?
When this bill has been costed out by commission staff. So if it became law, there's in there where it's like, we would need X new additional staff to process all this paperwork. That question has been asked by the legislature, and commission staff have answered that question where we have, when I went to commission staff and I said, if we got this grant program and we had to do X, Y, and Z as described in this bill, could you do that with existing staff? Yes, no. If no, how much staff would you need? What kind of overhead? And then that is shared with the legislature. So,
as our testing fund diminishes with less and less testing, that might be a good reallocation of staff, actually.
Out of my wheelhouse.
Do that. I'm Bridget Hanson, the Director of Administrative Services. That Sarah and Jonathan, we work as a team. So.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Thank you so much.
This is an information item and no action is necessary. Thank you, Mr. Howard. Having no additional items today, I adjourn the legislative committee. I would like to reconvene the general session and move to item 1I, new business. The bi-monthly agenda is presented for information. Next on the agenda is audience presentations. Please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raised hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if precipitating. No, that's something else. Participating by phone.
Audience presentations.
Recording secretary, are there any audience presentations?
There are no audience presentations.
Okay, the commission completed all the closed session agenda items. Therefore, I will move the agenda 1J. Staff briefed the commission on the matter of Kristen Meadows versus the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, Committee of Credentials of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Does 1 through 20, and no reportable action was taken. The commission granted Sherry Brocado's petition for reinstatement. The commission denied the following petitions for reinstatement, Daniel Harrison and Derek Morris. The commission adopted a decision and order in the following matters. Peter Almanzar, Adrian Belker, Stacy McKay, Laura Mudge, Dioka Okore, Commissioner De La Torre recused himself from this item. David Sandals, Commission Marquita Grenoshire and Shireen Pavre recused themselves from this item. Kauser Sheikh, Matthew Sorensen, and LaShawn Witt. The commission reviewed the transcript in the matter of Robert Lands. A decision and order will be prepared for the commission's adoption. The commission ordered a 30-day delay for preparation of the decision and order. Commissioner Jose Cardenas recused himself from this item. The commission reviewed the transcript in the matter of Samia Lau. A decision and order will be presented to the commission's adoption. The commission ordered a 30-day delay for preparation of the decision and order. The commission reviewed the transcript in the matter of Manuel Madrid Alguin. A decision and order will be prepared for the commission's adoption. The commission ordered a 30-day delay for preparation of the decision and order. The commission review. This would be much easier. Hold on. The commission reviewed the transcript in the matter of Sheila McCloskey. A decision and order will be prepared for the commission's adoption. The commission ordered a 30-day delay for preparation of the decision and order. The commission reviewed the transcript in the matter of Charles So. A decision and order will be prepared for the commission's adoption. The commission ordered a 30-day delay for preparation of the decision and order. The commission rejected the proposed decision and called for the transcripts in the following matters: Sarah Chapman, Omar Musleh, Laura Rankin, Douglas Rennick, Carolyn Warren, Jonathan Wright. The commission discussed the following consent calendar items and remanded the matters back to the Committee of Credentials: Mary Chivello, Jonathan Hare, Tuesday Euler, and Philip Skinner. I now adjourn the June 2023 meeting of the Commission on Credentialing, Teacher Credentialing. The next meeting is on August 24th and 25th of 2023. Hey. Okay. I'm going to have to learn people's last names.